Hi, welcome to this week's Thought for the Day from Broa Wistley. This week has seen the publishing of the report from the COVID inquiry, which have been quite critical of the leadership in all four nations. You've probably also noticed that Britain has recently had a whole succession of party leaders and prime ministers. It seems that although each is elected on a wave of enthusiasm, the initial optimism soon fades, and it's not long before disgruntled party members begin to circulate rumours of leadership challenges and drop hints about their lack of confidence in their leader. We saw it with the Conservatives, and we're seeing it all over again with the Labour Party. Leadership is, of course, hard. Part of the problem seems to be that good ideas and eye-catching promises are easy to make in an electoral manifesto, but they're much harder to implement in practice. Quick fix, seemingly logical policies often have unforeseen complications and unimagined consequences. The people are fickle too. We want leaders who use their power to implement policies that we benefit from, but woe betide them if they use their power to tackle issues that might benefit somebody else at our expense. We may crave strong leadership, but as soon as leaders make changes we don't like, then we get upset and start accusing them of not listening to the people. The truth is, we're divided and hard to please. We seem not to know what our long-term goals are, so we flip-flop from one short-term objective to the next. All we know for certain is that whatever our needs are, they're not being met. The Bible readings chosen by the Church in Wales for this week all have something to say on the subject of leadership. In the book of Jeremiah, we read of a people whose leaders have left them fragmented and pulling in different directions. The people have lost a sense of who they are and whom God has called them to be. There's no doubt in Jeremiah's mind that the leaders are at fault. He describes them as shepherds who have allowed their flock to become scattered because of their poor leadership and negligence. Jeremiah says that just as the owner of a flock replaces a bad shepherd, so too God will replace bad leaders. There is a promise that he will raise up good and faithful leaders, leaders who will restore his people's sense of belonging and lead them in righteousness and justice, safety and security, leading them beside still waters and in the paths of righteousness, as it says in Psalm 23. These good leaders will lay aside all short-term personal interest in favour of a better society in the long term. They will gather and reunite the scattered and disunited people under their care. They will teach them to recognise once again what is good for the long-term prospects of the community. In the reading from Colossians, we hear about people who have discovered that Jesus is this promised leader, the good shepherd who's led them out of confusion and darkness into the kingdom of God. They go further than that and recognize Jesus as containing the fullness of God's image. In other words, Jesus bears all the characteristics of God's nature, including modeling the justice and righteousness that are the foundations of God's plan for healthy community. They've come to know that in Jesus, all things hold together. All things were created through him and for him. He rightly deserves first place in everything because of his role in reconciling us with God through the power of the cross. The reading from Luke shows an image of the power of the cross. It's not the sort of power that we normally expect a leader to exercise. In fact, in worldly terms, it looks like folly. Nevertheless, Jesus' refusal to conform to anything but God's will, even under the threat of imminent death, renders the normal authority of this world powerless. Luke's account gives us a picture of the human Jesus suffering the most excruciating agony and death, and yet at the same time he shows us the divine Jesus opening the gates of his kingdom to the repentant thief. The thief sees his own guilt in the light of Jesus' innocence and divine kingship. He repents, is forgiven, and is welcomed into paradise where he is reconciled with his Maker. Even Jesus' tormentors are forgiven for not knowing what they're doing. Thus, in the human weakness of the cross, God's divine power is shown to be in full operation. When we remember that Jesus is the fullness of God, that he is one with God, what we see is not some cruel despot demanding the sacrifice of his Son, but a God who was willing to sacrifice himself to restore the broken relationship with humankind. God's love for us is what powers the salvation of the world. It's God's love that powers his kingdom of justice and righteousness. It's God's love that powers the continual outpouring of grace and mercy that allows us to be reconciled with him and gathered into a community of peace and harmony. All it takes to be part of that great kingdom is to recognize Jesus as the ultimate leader and to accept the freely given gifts that flow from his unbreakable manifesto promises. Thank you for listening. God bless you. See you next time.